When we drove the Mustang Boss 302, we declared it a favorite and the best Mustang ever. But now there's this, the Shelby GT350. We all drive cars every day. They need to meet our budget and our needs, but they should also be fun. That's our whole premise.
We're a small outlet, and we love what we do. For YouTube, we do these big comparisons like the one you're about to see, but we also do single cars with our fast blasts and long terms.
Outside YouTube, once a year we make a huge feature film. From the only full retrospective of the 911's first 50 years, to a celebration of affordable exotics and amazing roads, to the ultimate enthusiast road trip across Germany.
Plus, every week we do an audio podcast, The Car Debate, where we help you find a fun car that fits your situation.
So we hope you'll join us for all of it. Subscribe, please make comments, and make sure to share. Startup on the Boss. This is going to be an interesting day because we have driven the Boss. It is a 4-star car for both Todd and I. We have it here along with the GT350 as reference.
We're in the Bay Area where Justin, one of our show's followers, actually has both of these cars, this 2013 Boss and a 2016 GT350. I'll admit, I've never been much of a Mustang guy, and my dad had some growing up. There's never been cars that really excited me, until I got to the Boss 302. When we drove this the first time, I realized I kind of couldn't help myself. This was a 4-star car. It was the first Mustang I ever really liked.
I remember liking this car. It's angry, it's very raw, and as soon as you get hard onto it, it can be a little scary.
Driving this by itself in isolation, I remember this is a really good Mustang. This is a car that's intriguing to me. The problem is that when you put it with the new one, you realize massive shifts and changes have been made. And when you get them side by side, they look strikingly different. Styling-wise, the last generation of the Mustang didn't really excite me that much. However, the subtle differences across the board for the Boss, it just suggests something's going on here.
It looks a little bit sinister, but not like the GT350. This car looks rather pissed off.
It's like a road predator. You see it behind you and you just kind of think it's going to swallow you up.
It seems like the case with American cars. They look angrier than their European counterparts, and this one in particular.
Now, I will acknowledge that this car isn't aging very well, especially in the interior.
It's kind of cheap feeling. I feel like I've been in Subarus that feel more expensive and higher quality.
However, the seats are good. I do like the seats.
The seating position, I remember, is good. I like the seats in this car.
This 6-speed has a nice, very positive feel. You know exactly what gear you're in. You can tell the movement very easily. Pedals are a little bit wide, but by and large, this is a decent setup for driving.
Apart from the same kind of blah interior, the seat, brilliant, brilliant.
Now this has different seats than the Boss, but I actually kind of like the ones in the Boss better. I say that because my shoulders are floating a bit too much, and your butt is really low and your knees are really high. I did look, I can't get it to go any lower. Now I can quickly get over it.
It has a tiny screen. There's no gigantic nav screen. There's nothing what we're used to in terms of, here's the future of cars. None of that. It feels very analog in that sense. The things that you get are the oil pressure gauges and the oil temp gauges right dead smack in the middle of the IP here. Everything else, it's kind of something you're gonna ignore. That's not why you're buying this car. Okay, so that's just initial startup. This is now sport mode.
Well, this is no different at all. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. You can go away now. It's fine. It's exactly the same car. No changes at all. So this is not the R. The R is extra money. Gets you carbon wheels. Gets you more aero. This is not that version.
The R is a really track-focused car. If you have track availability and you can go use that car what it's designed for. But the 350 is something we can drive like this. We can find our favorite roads in the mountains and do nearly the same thing.
This car, as exactly spec'd, was $51,000, which, okay, on one level it's expensive, but on another level, you got a car that is competing with essentially the Corvette C7s of the world in almost every stat and capability, and it's cheaper.
A lot of me wants to tell you about the history. I want to tell you the lineage and the reason why and what Ford did, and none of that matters. With this car, yes, it has history, but you don't have to look back to be able to appreciate what this one is. This car feels European. And by that I mean all the things that we love about European cars in terms of their dynamic ability, the way they're built, the way it feels. It feels like a BMW or a Porsche.
This has two things about it right away that are totally different than the Boss. The first, of course, is that 5.2 liter V8 with a flat plane crank. We'll get back to that later. It also has an independent rear suspension, and it hasn't been since like the Cobras that the high-performance Mustang has had that.
Everybody's talking about the benefits of a flat plane crank, and there are many. It sounds unbelievably angry from the outside of the car, but it's really not bad on the inside. I can hear it, certainly. But it's not annoying. I just want more of it.
On acceleration, this engine sounds like Chewbacca gargling. And then on the overrun, it has an unbelievable crackle through the air like the aftermath of fireworks. That's only 4,500 RPM. This goes to 8,200. Now here's a problem. You get up about 5,000 RPM and that engine starts to resonate pretty terribly in this center console. It picks up a plastic rattle right here in the center console. This is not an old car. It has 3,000 miles on it. It hasn't been beat on, but yet it has that rattle, which makes me think it has it, period. That's the first thing in this car that has made me think this is a cheap automobile. So a flat plane crank is something that you normally would have heard on a Ferrari. It's one of the things that helps give them such a unique wail, but Ferrari has always kept theirs under 5 liters. Ford figured out a way to make this engine not shake itself to death at over 5 liters, so a 5.2 liter V8 flat plane crank. Now what that actually means is that the cylinders are firing on opposite banks and you never have an overlap in exhaust pressures. And so as a result, it can rev harder, faster, and higher.
The flat crank is more easily controllable. It enables you to execute the heel and toe so much more efficiently and quickly. This is now in the category of the harder you drive it, the better it gets.
Insane. You would need a track with some long stretches to really run this engine out. We don't have that, but I'm having fun anyway. Holy crap. So this has over 500 horsepower, nearly 100 more than the Boss has, and more than 50 pound-feet of torque. That's a significant change in the power level of this car.
And you think, okay, only 444. Doesn't sound like very much in the day and age that we now live in. It's fun, but by now it seems like we've all felt this. We've felt this kind of power. How far are we coming? How fast are we going in terms of technology driving the dynamic brilliance of our cars?
This is one of those cars that its old school muscle car attitude means you can't hide anything from it, and it's not going to cover over your mistakes.
This car feels rowdy. It's still just raw and rowdy, and it wants to be the life of the party. It walks in, kicks the door open, might have already had a little bit too much to drink. That is the Boss Mustang. It rewards you when you get things right, and it punishes you when you screw things up. Shifting, heel and towing, getting it wrong into the corner. It'll let you know. There we go. See, it rewarded me. It likes that.
There's not a lot of steering information, but there's a lot of car information. And you're bouncing around a little bit, that suspension setup, that rear, but nothing's really surprising. Even when it steps out, it just steps out in a way that you go, okay, all right, we'll catch it, we'll keep going. Like that.
Car manufacturers keep pushing each other. They keep getting better. At the point of driving this, the Boss is only 3 years old. Yeah, it's at the tail end of its life cycle as far as styling and the model and the chassis. But the model year is only 3 years old. And so then it was excellent. But it doesn't have this real sharp feedback that Todd and I continue to unfold. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't hold the line. There's just some vagueness, I'm not sure what the car is doing. What are those front wheels telling me? And there is a point where you just sort of unwind the steering and give it throttle.
That's the thing, the front end on this cuts in pretty quickly, and that live rear axle tries really hard to follow well. Driven by itself, it feels great. You'd never notice. Driven with the GT350 back-to-back, this feels like the back end's half asleep.
What's interesting is we found the steering ratios are actually slightly slower on the GT350, which shocked all of us. I'm driving a European car. I must be. The road holding ability, the way it throws the power down, and the biggest difference that I'm noting from the Boss is that independent rear. Undulations don't upset it.
I'm really struck, after getting out of that Boss, how precise this is and how much the back end feels fused to the front. I mean, it feels almost like four-wheel steering in comparison to that Boss.
No longer can we put these into two different camps and say, oh, American car and European cars, and they do things differently. I challenge the Porsche 911 ahead of me to this kind of feeling. And that's coming from a Porsche guy. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm getting the same love, the same feeling that I get when I drive European cars that I am in this. That's huge. That's huge.
You just want to drive hard. You want to shift a lot. You want to get on the brakes late. When you drive the Boss, you get to a place where you realize these brakes aren't great, but they never really let you down most of the time. Then you get in this car and you realize that the brakes on the Boss are woeful by comparison. I mean, these brakes are some of the most aggressive brakes I've ever encountered on a street car, honestly.
Oh, okay, the brakes. Unbelievable.
Now this car does not have the MagneRide dampers, which I'm kind of surprised by because we're huge proponents of that technology. It improves just about every car. Now with the independent rear suspension, this car sticks to the road much better than that Boss does. It's very controllable, it's very predictable. However, I do think if you get this, you want the MagneRide.
I'm not finding a reason to, and especially if that's gonna keep you from getting into it as far as cost, as far as the final MSRP on this car.
Every car I've ever driven with that kind of technology on it is even better than it would be without it. The ability to actually have those dampers sucking the car down and absorbing what needs to go on even more than this, it's kind of hard to fathom, to be honest, because this is really well set up without them.
I don't know that it needs it. Would I like to have it? Sure. Does it need it? No. And I keep coming back to that because of the price. This is what makes American cars so great.
The noise, the handling, the stellar brakes. And I need a track to get a sense of how hard this can go. I'm just aware I need a track. No matter what we're doing on this road, you just can't really get to the limits. They're so high.
So Justin, the owner, he's got both these cars. And funny enough, the Boss is his favorite. It is the car that scares him a bit.
It's funny, these cars are only 3 years apart. And yet when you get into them back to back, this feels old school. And yet, the way this handles is much more like a modern sports car. It's stuck with features out of both worlds.
It feels American. Work with what you got. Engine, live axle, this is the chassis, so with what you have, let's make it as good as we can. That seems like the pinnacle of what the Boss represents to the Mustang. But make no mistake, Boss is still really fast. And it makes me laugh. It does. It's a drunken party animal. That's what the Boss is.
This is a car that handles well, it sounds good, the gearbox is easy. And while it does have some muscle car, brawler, less than refined moments about it, like the live rear axle, by and large, this is a very capable sports car.
I'm questioning everything there is about the performance cars that we drive after having driven the GT350. I'm questioning price, I'm questioning dynamic ability, speed, power, everything. Because this is now no longer in the category of, oh, it's, bang for the buck, just get it. You can't say that anymore. I can't say that anymore. I'm astonished at this car. I want one. You've got to be kidding me.
I would maybe still argue that Boss 302 is the best Mustang because the Shelby GT350 is another animal entirely. It's a completely different car. Listen to this thing, except for that resonance, that's awful. So no, this car's not perfect. I mean, I don't love the seating position. I'm not thrilled with the way these seats shove my knees so high they almost touch the wheel. That bugs me. I really don't like the fact that this center console resonates as badly as it does. That's awful. There's a couple strikes against it. However, you start pushing this car, those things are irrelevant because the seat won't let you go. And if you're driving it certainly really hard, you just want it to be loud. So while it's not perfect, it's a spectacular car to drive, and it makes me lust after a Mustang, and I have never said that before.
It is a rare thing that we have here. You know this?
Yeah.
This is a 4-star car that both you and I rated.
From both of us, which is not common to begin with.
The next generation of that has surpassed it so entirely that I feel like this is a Mustang in name only. That whole, this is the Mustang you know and love. Oh, that, that feeling. It's a muscle car. We like that kind of feeling. And then we get in this car, and everybody's ranted and raved, and we've read everything that you guys have.
Yeah.
And we think, all right, we need to drive this for ourselves.
It's bound to be good. Yeah.
It's bound to be good. It's got to be. They've dramatically improved it. This is Ford performance at its peak. And then we come out of this car astonished.
Yeah.
It's European. I feel that feeling that you have, well, that I get, that I talk about all the time, that sort of unattainable, I can't explain, why do you want this car over that?
Yeah.
I have to throw that out now. And here I am, European snob car guy, whatever.
Sure.
And getting out of this car, I'm going,
well, it feels very European. And you know what I think is
it.
interesting? I actually think the current GT, obviously the same chassis as this,
Yeah.
feels a lot more Mustang than this does. It feels like somewhere in the middle between these two. This doesn't feel like a Mustang to me. That's a great muscle car. This is a great sports car.
That's a good point.
It is sharp. It hangs onto you very well. It is so coherent front to back. And I know part of that is the IRS now. I get that. But still, it's amazing to throw this down a back road and to get to 5,500 RPMs, look down and be like, oh, wait, I've got 3,000 left.
Right.
How did that happen?
Right.
This engine is another reason that it just feels so unique. This feels like a moment in time at Ford, who's killing it right now, by the way, with the Fiesta and the Focus. Think about the Fiesta ST and the Focus ST, and then the RS coming, and then they have this Mustang, which honestly, this is Ford's competition to the Corvette of all things.
I'm soured on all Mustangs below this one. I don't want another Mustang below this.
If you can afford it, this is the one you have to get. But that's the other thing about it. We're talking 50 grand, which, while that's not nothing for what you're getting here in performance and power and attitude with this engine, it's a shockingly good deal.
Well, Ford has a car that will compete with GM's ZL1, the Camaro, and the Corvette.
You're right.
They only have one car to do that with.
Yeah.
And I think they have.
Where are you on the Ford lineup? Are you seeing what we're seeing here? Have you driven this car?
I can't wait to recommend this on the podcast to somebody.
Well, yeah, no kidding. So it was like, well, we have 50 grand. Well, you could get Paul's M2, or you could just go right here and be done at Ford.
Right. I'm finding that so interesting, how you revisit a car and you have this fond memory of a car in your mind, and then you drive it again and you go, yeah, it's still good. I still like it. But what's next?
I will say this. If you're looking at the Shelby and you're thinking, wow, what an amazing Mustang, and you want a Mustang with character and presence and you can't get the Shelby, the Boss is a great alternative. I will acknowledge. This is the $30,000 equivalent. I mean, these were 45 new, and they've actually hung on to their value really well. I mean, people have recognized that this is a unique moment in Mustang time, and it is, I feel like, that transition from pure muscle car, transitioning to full sports car. This is the midpoint.
If you're even close to considering this car, I couldn't recommend it more highly. I almost feel like I have to give this 4.5 stars, or maybe 5 out of our 4-star rating. It's that good. So thereby proving you don't have to spend all your money on a Ferrari or a super expensive exotic to get this kind of feeling.
I come away realizing that the Boss is the first Mustang I like, and the Shelby GT350 is the first Mustang I really want. Wow.
Don't forget to subscribe for videos on Thursdays.